Is recording?
It's fake toilet.
Fake toilet.
Is that the first thing we got on camera? Hi, I'm Chinalika. This is Vlad Von Kitsch. They have appeared on my channel before, technically, but that was a very long time ago.
Different time.
We were different.
We were babies.
People. We were babies.
Yeah.
Vlad is a burlesque performer, makeup artist, creator of strange eldritch creatures. Vlad and I are going to be discussing, well, kind of whatever pops into our heads, but also specifically talking about our experiences of being goth/alternative and also not white, which is something like I loosely touched on in my metal video, but I thought it'd be fun to just do a sort of chill vlog just talking about our experiences with that. It's a space and a culture that means a lot to us and can also be incredibly hostile to brown people. What is goth, if someone were to ask you? And it is totally fine if we do not have an answer at the end of this, because having strict definitions on things is generally the problem and the issue with spaces or like cultures or whatever. So what is it to you, I guess, is maybe a better question.
I think I would define goth broadly. All kinds of goth media. I would describe it as the marriage of romance and horror.
Ooh, I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's spooky, but it's also beautiful.
I like that a lot, actually, because I think people often describe goth as a sort of like a music-based like subculture, which I think has like quite a lot of weight, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
I think that is something that I've been seeing a lot lately, and it does get kind of repetitive and irritating, as much as it is like true that like the goth subculture stemmed from the musical genre, but like goth as a sensibility is so much further reaching than that. Like, and existed like literally centuries before that. I
do think self-identification, like many things, is what it is. Like, if you feel you are, then you are. Like, goth is basically a gender.
Bats in my pants.
Bats in your pants?
Yeah, what's in your pants? Bats. You know?
Is this a reference, or are you just being you? In the comments of the like gender and metal video that I did, there was someone in the comments who said something like, goth aesthetics help them gender-wise because they feel like if they lean into the goth aesthetic, then they're not doing gender, they're just doing goth. And I was like, oh, I resonate with this a lot. Like, I've definitely had this exact thought before. But the trouble is that this is all very nice, what we're saying, and I'm sure there are lots of, like, hardcore gothic people who would like disagree with us on this and be like, no, there are absolutely rigid definitions and you can't just like faff around and wear bare ears. That's like where more of like the issue with, I guess, like the community as a whole is. I did consider like being more like gothing up for this video, but I'm not. I couldn't be bothered. I was too tired. Well, also, again, the white goths don't have to. They can just like wear a black top and have black hair, and it's like, oh, they're goth. Whereas if you do that, then it's just like, well, you're just a person.
Or you're goth with a caveat that's like really insensitive and gross. It's like goth people can't see past brownness. They can't just be goth. Like, it's got to be like Rasta goth. Or
interesting. Okay,
ghetto goth is another one I've had.
Right.
Like, it's always got to have a qualifier because you can't be pure goth.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with kind of the subculture at large, because I think I've always been a goth in my soul, but I don't think it expressed on the outside very much until like relatively recently. No matter how I felt, the fact that I like wouldn't be acknowledged as it, even if I did kind of the same stuff as other people, meant that I didn't feel like I had a claim to it. Which has meant that I haven't like been in the scene as much, whereas you have. So like, what's your kind of experience of that?
I honestly haven't had that much experience in the scene, I would say, like in terms of like clubs,
right,
or like other, like, having like a goth community. I've never really had that. I used to go to like one goth club, but I stopped going because there was like issues with like people that would go, and also the like people that run it. Like, it turned out that they were quite ignorant and racist, and it turned out being like,
Surprise.
yeah, like just a bit of a hostile space. I feel like I've never really been embraced by the goth community. Like, the people that I have met within it have been through like a couple of other friends who would know them, and it was always like, if I would go to a club, no one would really talk to me. I feel like also like people talk about like seeing another alternative person out on the street and having like, I mean, what I understand as being similar to like the nod that black people do towards each other, but like it's like, oh, acknowledgement that, hey, we're both alternative. Never had that. And like when I was a kid, being like very shy and like not really relating to many people at school, like and I would go out in my little town where there were like no alternative people, there was no scene. So if I did see someone that was alternative, I would be very like, you know, like, hey, have you seen my shirt? Kind of thing. Like, hey, please recognize me. Smile at them, nod at them, whatever, and I would get dirty looks most of the time, like more often than not. Or, like, if not, just ignored. And I would hear like these stories about people like meeting like the most amazing friends from being alternative, like being in the community, and I'd be like, what community? It just was never accessible to me. Goth spaces have always felt like, if not outright hostile, just wary of or like skeptical of my gothness. I've had people like question, you know, do the whole like name 3 albums bullshit in a more subtle way, like just assuming that I'm not like, I just like to dress weird.
Yeah.
There is this kind of idea that we're just not into that kind of music.
I think the difference, because you know how you mentioned like the black nod, so like I think there's a queer nod as well, and I think I have experienced like the queer nod. I think the reason why I feel like I've had like, there is a sort of an immediate sense of community with sort of queer people that there isn't really just because somebody's like wearing black, is that queer spaces like have an ideology behind them, or like queer people, the queer community has an ideology. Then yes, of course, like the community has its issues and everything, but I think by and large, we are trying to do right by each other and trying to look out for each other and trying to look after each other. That's kind of the sense, and that's like what I get from the kind of like very superficial interactions with you know, passing strangers, which for me are very like minimal, because I'm terrified of like making eye contact with strangers. And with like the black nod, I expect it's a similar thing. It's like, oh, you know, I know what you like, we've gone through similar stuff, and like I'm here, like that, and you know, you're not alone. Like that's kind of what it is. Whereas there's a lot of crossover between goth, and by goth in this video we're using that term very broadly to mean kind of like all like alternative like subcultures that are in this vein, so like including like, I don't know, emo and whatever the kids are calling it these days. To the best of my knowledge, because I don't see why there would be necessarily, there's not necessarily any particular ideology behind it.
Yeah, and I think that is something that people get the wrong idea about, because goth is an offshoot of punk as far as like the musical subculture. Like, it would be nice to think that you can't be goth unless you have punk ideals. Like, you can't be punk unless you have punk ideals. That is like anti-fascism, anti-racism, etc. It's like anarchy, like that. You know, if you're not like left wing, then you can't be punk. You can't be goth, because that is where it came from. That's the root of it. But in reality, that's never been how it is. There's people that have co-opted these things that are supposed to be radical and turn them into something gross and conservative. Especially within like goth and punk, you have like Nazi skins, You have like really weird like affiliations with like white supremacy with goths, and like the use of like Nazi uniforms like being used as an aesthetic, and ideals being woven into the music as well. And it's like, no, you can't just assume that every goth is gonna be cool.
It is so hard to explain. Just being like, oh, you know, the goths bases tend to be somewhat hostile to like people of color, because it's often in so many like subtle ways that you'd have to make a collage. There are ways in which it's very obvious, like of course the sort of the look of goth. I remember when I was in school, because I sort of fell into like a sort of more alternative crowd, and I remember like asking one of my friends like, what is goth, you know, like how does one be one? And she said something like, wear a lot of black, whatever, like horror related paraphernalia, black hair, pale skin. And that was the image you saw everywhere. Like there just were no like brown skinned goths,
right?
And my friend wasn't trying to be horrible, she was just repeating what she'd seen. Like it probably didn't occur to her that like saying this is going to like fundamentally exclude this person from this space. It means they just can't do it. And that's kind of probably what I internalized. I was like, oh well, I don't have pale skin, so I can't be goth, and that was the end of it.
I remember like searching on Google Images like black goths, not being able to find anything. It's just white people wearing black, and it was like, oh, there's nothing. I would find like one black goth on YouTube doing tutorials, and they'd have like 3 subscribers, and like I had to like dig through to find like anything. I found myself still wanting to like be this thing and still wanting to be included in this thing, and I didn't feel like I could express myself properly in that scene, so I didn't try to really, or like I would do it in a way that was like a lot more subtle and therefore just simply wouldn't be acknowledged, because I think if you only did like the bare minimum as like a racialized person, it would just not be acknowledged as being goth. And then if you do like more enough that it has to be acknowledged, then you wouldn't just be like, it wouldn't just be like, oh, that's like a goth person or a punk person or an emo person or whatever. It's more like, what's that? Right, literally. Like, that's my most common street harassment phrase that I get is, what is that? Which, like, to be fair, I'm dressed like a teddy bear today. You know what? I would love to know what it is. I feel like this is also a thing where, like, if you deviate from, like, the very narrow, like, idea of what a goth is or what a whatever is, like if you have like other influences, then it's also like right well, you're a poser, right? Immediately.
So all your pink stuff and your cute stuff is like not permissible, or glittery stuff, or like bear stuff.
Right. I remember like my first boyfriend told me I wear too much pink to be a goth, and I was sitting there like, motherfucker, I know for a fact I know more about goth music than you do. If you're a person of colour, then you have to fit more strictly, you have to abide more strictly to the rules.
Because you're already deviating, so you can't deviate again.
There are still people who are very committed to letting goths of colour know that they're not white and they should be concerned about that. Because, like...
Shit!
Right.
I had no idea!
Right. Being, like, visible on the internet as an alternative person, like, I have come across these accounts, like, full, like, pages that are dedicated to keeping goth white. Like, make goth white again. Like, and I've had, like, comments telling me to bleach my skin and stuff like that. And, like... You're not a goth. You're not white, and it's like, consider sucking my dick, because why you're spending energy on this, so angry, like for this cause. This is what you're dedicating your time to. A whole page full of like hating on people of colour
This is the
for daring
thing.
to wear some spooky shit.
It's just like, why is this the hill that you've chosen to die on? It's
Right.
just such a waste of time. Even like genres and stuff I can't be bothered with. Like, actually I didn't get very many of these on my metal video, to credit to my audience, but there were a few people who were like, Evanescence isn't metal and you shouldn't have included that in here, and that person isn't strictly like, there's a difference between like gothic and symphonic, like just ignoring the points that I was trying to make, and like which was, I was including them because they're relevant to the points I'm making,
Right.
not because like they strictly like fit. I don't care.
Right.
I just don't care.
You could be discovering new music with this time that you're and energy that you're expending on this. Like, you could be doing so many other things. You could be going for a walk.
Yes, like labels are important, definitions are important, there are reasons why people have them, but I think that the way that they are useful is if you already feel something, or you already happen to be doing something or into something, and then you're like, oh, this word kind of describes what I happen to be, and therefore like I'm gonna kind of use it.
Yeah.
As opposed to like getting to that word by some way or another and then being like, now I have to fit myself within the constraints of it.
I feel like this is why one of the reasons why I grew out of emo was because it felt so rigid. And I know, like, this is, again, every subculture has people like this who, like, man the fucking borders and, like, will be guarding, like, to make sure no one, like, has a hair out of place. But I feel like that was maybe because it was the first alternative subculture I ventured into. And I first, like, discovered that, oh, there's all this racism. And, like, I don't have straight hair. My mum would not let me relax my hair. I was like, oh, I don't have this and I don't have this, so I can't really fit into it. And then, so I was, like, trying really hard to, like, overcompensate with other things. And, like, oh, I've got to have the skinny jeans and I've got to have, like, I've got to wear this kind of hoodie. And I realised that it all just got very suffocating very, very quickly. And I was like, oh, this doesn't really feel quite right. I realised that there were, like, other things that I was interested in trying, like, fashion-wise, and I would, like slowly started bringing things in, but then I was like, oh, I can't do that because I'm not fitting into anything. And then I went through, like, this short phase of, like, I really tried to be emo, and then I was like, okay, that's not working. And then I, like, got really into metal, and I went through a period of just wearing basically leather jeans and a Cradle of Filth hoodie all the time. I got really into extreme metal and, like, started experimenting with that kind of fashion. And then I reached a point where I was like, I'm not fulfilled just trying to fit into, like, a box, like, which is so cliche, but the whole, like, looking at a subculture and trying to be that, like, trying to, like, shape my fashion around an existing mold didn't work for me. It wasn't fulfilling. I got really bored and like also wasn't being recognized as that thing by
so it wasn't even
other
working.
people. It wasn't even working. So I was like, what am I doing? And then, like, after I left school, I was going to sixth form where I could, like, wear what I wanted every day. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want.
Yeah.
You don't have to fit into anything. And when, like, I'm not worried about people looking at me and not immediately thinking goth, because frankly it's none of their business.
One thing that I appreciate about you is you were referring to me, I think without me really saying anything about it, as a goth, like, significantly before I had really visually expressed that very much at all. Obviously we shared musical tastes and stuff, so you knew that, but also I feel like you were probably able to pick up on the subtler nods to it in the ways that I was dressing that, like, a white person would probably just not notice.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
We can't get too gay on camera. My editor has to see this and he has to not vomit. I remember Hazel asking me at one point, like, why do you like spooky stuff? Or something to that effect. And I was just like, that is an enormous question. How much time do you have? I might need to, like, write an essay to, like, work out my own thoughts. So, again, I'm not necessarily expecting us to be able to come to any conclusions on this. It's like, it's not that far removed from, honestly, from saying, like, why are you gay? But like, what do you think for yourself?
Why am I like this?
Why are you like this? The entire internet wants to know.
Oh, I'm a drama queen with depression, I think, is the most succinct way I could say it. I think the reason that I'm drawn to goth is the same reason that I'm drawn to horror. Horror and goth and things that explore and romanticize this, like, dark side of life. They tend to be a comfort and a source of connection for those of us who are marginalized and treated as other. We see ourselves in, like, this darkness, this monstrosity, and we're just like, let's be fabulous and spooky. Like, vampires pretty much sum it up, don't they? Like, this beautiful romantic monster. Especially people who are trans, people who are othered in any way, we can see ourselves in that and find empowerment in it.
That's really interesting that you're talking about, like, the connection, like, between, like, queerness, like being racialized, all these things specifically, and the draw to monstrosity, horror, alternative subcultures, because that is what makes it so frustrating that they're often so hostile towards like marginalized people. But yeah, that's definitely a part of it. I think that's probably a part of it that I've only become more aware of as I've kind of grown older, and as I've, like, because I didn't know I was queer when I was really young, whereas I think you did. So I wasn't able to, like, make that connection. I'm trying to think about, like, where the draw comes from for me, because I think part of it was just being an angsty teenager and being, like, pissed off at things, and metal had this, like, you know, this aggression and melodrama to it that was just cathartic. It was a release, and that's, I think, a big reason that why a lot of people are drawn to metal. But when it comes to goth music specifically, kink, I feel like we can't omit kink in this conversation. I think that's probably a big part of it, like the whole sort of, like, oh, this is so spooky, and so like, oh, it's all so dark, and oh, so romantic. Like, it's
having sex in a castle.
Well, yeah. I mean, I haven't done that personally, but also just aesthetically, there's a lot of crossover between between just kinkwear and gothwear, like huge crossover, like to
right
the
through
point,
from punk, right? Yeah.
I wonder why those things cross over, and is it to do with sort of things that are taboo and things that are dark? Because, like, a lot of kink is related to, like, power dynamics, right? And taking things that are supposed to be, that could be scary in, like, other contexts, and making them, like, good and enjoyable. And horror and goth and all of this kind of stuff does very much the same thing. Yeah. So I guess that's, like, probably why there's just a lot of, like, correlating themes. Yeah,
I mean, relating back to gothic fiction and gothic horror, like, the idea of this romantic monster like the vampire, that is extremely kinky as a concept. Yeah. Like, the blood and the tortured love and, like, the thrall, you know? I think that's a part of it as well. The link to gothic horror and the relationship between, like, sexuality and death and la petite morte, to quote Bride of Chucky. This is Frederick. Vlad made him for me quite some time ago, and he doesn't get out much, so I thought it would be nice if he was in this video. The way that you dress is very outlandish and draws a lot of attention, and you're very shy. So, like, to a lot of people, that would seem confusing. How do you reconcile those two things, or, like, how does it work? For me, being able to customize my character, as the kids would say, it's a way of attaining a sense of control. I struggle with agoraphobia, so the outside world is very scary, and I am a very shy, socially anxious person, so I often feel when I'm outside like just like a deer in the headlights. And being able to control the way that other people see me, the way I see myself, it's like a security blanket. It gives me like an anchor, because no matter how anxious I am, no matter how badly I might socially mess up, and miss cues, whatever, I at least know that I look good.
That's true. And I don't think you do it for this reason, but this is a side effect, is that, yes, you'll get, like, unwanted attention and, you know, negative comments being thrown at you and stuff, but you will also get random people approaching and just being like, oh my god.
Yeah.
How do you do this? And then it's a conversation starter.
Yeah, it breaks the ice because immediately people can look at me and know quite a lot about me, I feel like. And they're judging me based on what I've presented to them, my creative expression, as opposed to my appearance or my shyness or the way I talk or things that I might be insecure about. It's like, no, I've made this nice piece of art that I'm like at least somewhat happy with, because I do see it as an art form.
Well, it is, yeah.
And I've created this piece that I'm now presenting to the world. It is a conversation starter. People who do enjoy the vibes that I'm putting out, people that like pink or like bears or like demons or whatever. It's like there's a lot for people to immediately know about me and come up and talk to me about horror movies or anything, which is like a godsend for me.
Again, not that that's why you're doing it.
Yeah. Sometimes I want to be left alone.
Well, exactly, yeah. But
if people are nice, I'm a friendly person.
Exactly, yeah. I think a common misconception when it comes to alternative fashion or dress sense or whatever is that you're doing it for attention.
Right.
Which honestly is one of the strangest accusations to me, because like, yeah, maybe there's a time when you're like a teenager, and I didn't have this phase myself, but I think like some of my friends maybe did, where they would like do it because they mostly sort of were resonating with the sort of being hard done by aspect of it, and like wanting to like display that to the world a bit, and there was an element of that, but also like even like the friend I'm thinking of is now doesn't really maintain that the same sort of aesthetic as she had back then, but when she listens to like the music that she wants us to listen to, it's still all like emo stuff from the 2000s, so like clearly like there were aspects of it that was still there, and sometimes when she's getting dressed up she'll like dress in a goth thing and I'm like, oh, it's coming back. Like, let's say that even if there is like a period of time where you're doing something for attention, I don't think that necessarily means that thing has no meaning to you.
There's nothing wrong with doing things for attention also. Like, you know, people like attention. Some people. Yes, it can be nice. For me, it's not why I do it, but like even if it was, like, why is that a problem?
right, because it can be levied at like various other things, like just being queer, like, and looking visibly queer. That can be like, people can be like, oh, you're doing that for attention, as opposed to, you know, I don't know, whatever acceptable reason there is to do it, or even just at like just being sexy, like if you're like you know, if you're like just especially if you're not a man, right, and you just look amazing, or like, I don't know, where you're showing too much cleavage or like something like that, right, then it will be like, oh, like they want a certain type of attention or whatever.
It boils down to, you caught my attention and now I'm mad about it.
yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna blame you. Yeah. And it's like, maybe there's something you need to address within your soul.
I don't know what kind of space you have to be in to be so like threatened by someone who just looks like Vlad. Me and Hazel were walking along once, and I think we were both wearing like particularly good outfits that day. Yeah, there was just a guy who was like, I don't know, halfway out of a car, and yeah, just as we passed, he was like, oh, Jesus, or like, Jesus Christ, or something. And I was just like, what exactly are you offended by here? We're just two people. Is it because we're gay? Is it because we look too good? Is it because we're like...
You're brown?
Yeah, it could be anything. Yeah,
that's like... another fun thing about being a goth and a person of colour, or a goth or a visibly queer person. It's like, who knows what they're angry about?
Yeah.
Could be
probably,
so many things.
Probably all of it. I think the thing is that they must be really sad. Nobody would do that if they were really like content in themselves, if they felt like good about their own life. Like if there was like a moral like aspect to any of this, if there was like an actual like issue they could take where they'd be like, this causes harm in this way, then it would be one thing. But because it doesn't, I think honestly that like there's an element probably of jealousy in there, and not necessarily because they're like, oh, I really want to wear a bear hat, but because and you know, you do tend to get this more from people who are older, because there are certain norms and expectations and things that would have affected their lives and forced them to like move in certain ways and restrict this like creative fun aspect of their personalities. So then it's no wonder that like they feel resentful when they see younger people just living their best selves.
Right.
And it's quite sad, but they still shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it kind of just makes me laugh now. Like, to see
you must
people
have had
get
so much of it.
Yeah, it takes a lot to upset me now. Like, I can't remember the last time someone said something about the way I dressed that it, like, actually had any effect on me.
That's really good.
Yeah, which I don't know. Am I dead inside? Maybe. But, it is mostly funny to me because I have been like dealing with it for so long. Even before I started, like even when I was just dressing in like metal hoodies and jeans and just wearing a lot of black, I would get, because I lived in a small town, being a black person, like even before I started dressing alternative at all, I would get stared at, and it was just like, and I would get comments on the street. So it was just like one thing to another, like different types of comments, but it was all the same, like people angry for no reason. Because at this point, I've stopped letting that affect how I choose to express myself, and I just wear what I want. Obviously, it's become more and more extreme over the years because my creativity has evolved and whatever. I have learned to tune it out.
I probably had this expression like I was trying not to laugh while Vlad was talking about receiving racial harassment, which is not which is not as insensitive as it looks like. It's because you were talking about your small town, and can I tell them the name of the town you're from?
Yes.
Vlad is from a town called Grimsby. Grimsby is like the name that you give your shitty little town in your like fictional novel, and then you show it to your friend, and your friend is like, no, you can't call it Grimsby, that's too on the nose.
Right, but then it's like you actually go there and it's like, wow, it is that fictional small town that's just like cartoonishly horrific. Like the place stinks of fish. It's like a fucking Lemony Snicket novel.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. It kind of always amazes me as well how anyone can look at you and their response is kind of like as if you were just sort of born looking like this. Like, I don't understand how, even if it's not your thing, how you could not appreciate like the artistry that goes into like everything you do, and like the precision, and just like, you know, they freehand everything. It kind of blows my mind that like anyone, even if it's not their thing, can like look at you and just respond as if like you just threw that on.
The thing is, a lot of the hate that I do get, I regularly get comments from haters who will, in the comment, clarify. It's very impressive, though. Oh, okay. They're fucking raging. They're so mad. They're accusing me of having, like, they're like armchair diagnosing me, accusing me of being a terrible person because I'm wearing some clown white or whatever. And then, like, they'll have, like, the caveat in the comment, it is very impressive though, but you should be doing better other things with your talent.
That's it. Okay, so that's where like the moral judgment is. It's not just that the way you look like is not something that's available to them, but also that like the idea being that this should be the main focus of your time. And that it's not worthwhile, you're not contributing to society in like a valuable way. I think that's where like some of the value and like moral judgment comes from. But that's ridiculous because artists are generally acknowledged in society to be valuable and important.
It is really weird how people hate artists but also could not live without us. I tell you about the person that told me I should quit drag and flip houses.
yeah, I remember this one. That was one of the best ones. I think the term like flip houses has just stayed with me forever. Like, just imagine you with a spatula, just go flip some houses.
Just take that eyeliner off. Flip a house. Why don't you? Have you ever had people suggest alternative careers for you on YouTube?
Oh. You know, I don't think so. There are obviously people who don't like what I do, but they normally just criticise it. I am sure there are many people who would prefer I had a different career, but...
People suggest alternative careers for when this channel goes down the toilet. But seriously, do suggest other careers, because I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah, it would be really funny. I want to know what else you think I should do. Please tell me what else you think I should be doing with my life. I definitely sometimes concern myself with whether or not what I'm doing is, like, valuable. But, like, I think...
so valuable.
Thank you.
It lifts a weight off so many people's chests to be able to share your videos to people who are in their life who don't understand a particular thing.
Oh, right, yeah. I guess that's useful.
And, like, can just... watch your video, be like, yes, this person is on it, is explaining this in a very clear way that is also funny and accessible. I can just send that to my racist mum or whatever.
Your poor mum!
Not my mum!
You've been doing kind of significant alternative looks for quite a long time, whereas for me, it's even now, it's like, it's fairly, like, chill. It's not, like, super, like, whatever, but
some of your recent looks are not chill at all, in the best way.
There definitely has been a shift for me in terms of, like, how I express myself, in terms of, like, clothing and fashion and stuff, and a lot of that is quite closely linked to gender as well. While you sort of went more in the direction of, like, expressing yourself kind of as true to yourself as you wanted, and just, like, using that as, like, a way of taking back control, I think I kind of almost went in the other direction, because I was so concerned with, like, potentially receiving unwanted attention that I made myself invisible. Firstly, I'd always like my hair would always be back, just in a low ponytail, so kind of like the least noticeable style of hair you can have, basically. Obviously, no makeup. Makeup isn't something that I tend to wear on a regular basis anyway, not because I don't like it, I just can't be bothered. And I don't know, I think I would wear just a top, like maybe like a sort of like a plaid lesbian shirt, like open over the top of it, and jeans, and like that was it. It would get, like, slightly more interesting now and then, like, I'd have jeans that had, like, a pattern or something. Like, it would be, like, slightly more obvious that there were, like, goth influences in there, but I'd still largely be dressing in a way that just wouldn't draw any eyes towards me. And I think that's not coincidental. If you have a sort of a difficult relationship with interacting with other people, especially strangers, I feel like you either have to lean hard into being noticed or lean hard into being not. And I really, really struggle to be perceived by people. I think that just being noticed in kind of any way was frightening to me. So I would, as much as possible, dress in a way that just... people's eyes would just slide over me, you know, like it's just like, oh, there's not really anyone there. I'm dressed like a sort of a smudge on the wall, you know, that's kind of was my aesthetic. I think I've understood myself, my gender and sexuality for a while, but as I have, like, felt more and more confident in my community and stuff, I have felt more like expressing the kind of alternative gothy aspect of my personality more in a more visible way, because another way in which we are very different is that your personality naturally extends itself outside of your body. You can go into your place and it's like, oh, this place belongs to Vlad. There's a Freddy Krueger doll, and just there's something about the expression on his face that just like does
so
upset
happy.
me when you're out of the room. But he's only about a foot tall, so like I think I could take him. My personality just doesn't express itself in that way very readily. That's something that, like, and if I did, like, very much, it would kind of almost feel fake. I don't identify with things super readily. In fact, like, I would say that, like, a large part of my identity is not identifying with things. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I feel so thoroughly agender, because, like, I don't identify with gender at all. But goth stuff is one of the few things that I actually do identify with, and, like, you know, horror-esque stuff and kink and all of that kind of thing. And I think I am allowing that to like come to the surface a little more visually now. And part of it also was in some ways like prep for surgery, because I knew that post surgery I would have a body that was more visibly trans, which admittedly is not like such a huge difference that that people are going to notice the vast majority of the time, but like in certain situations they will. Some aspects of like dressing in a more like alternative way, in a way that like might draw people's eyes, is to prepare for when that happens, that when that's outside of my control, when people are just kind of looking anyway. And it does help, I'm finding. It does, like, when people look at me, I'm like, oh, well, they're looking because of my hair, or they're looking because of my shoes, or they're looking, you know, sometimes they literally, like, their gazes go straight to the floor, like, I know they're looking at my shoes, do you know what I mean? If I was to just be there, and then if they were to look at me, then it would be like, well, I don't know why they're looking at me, and that freaks me out. Wearing dresses, that's another thing that I started doing lately. It's fun. I remember, like, you know, coming up to you very excitedly one day and being like, Vlad, like, you know what I've discovered is you can just wear anything. I could go outside and like have a toilet seat around my neck if I really wanted. And then I was like, obviously you know this very well already, but it's cool to have that discovery. It's cool to have just that kind of freedom of expression, because, you know, I can't remember who said this. I'm sure many people have said this, but like, you know, nobody dies and is like, if only I had dressed in a more boring way. If only I'd worn, like, less interesting clothing. Like, I wish I hadn't worn such interesting clothes. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody, like, why not? It's just so fun. I feel quite good about who I am right now, and that's really nice, because, you know, I don't think I necessarily was there when we met.
No,
So...
I mean, you had never put makeup on before. When we were
You're
there.
right.
I was showing you how to apply foundation. Like, I still thought your aesthetic was cool as hell. I thought you were very, very cool, like, aesthetically before we met in person and got to know each other. But, like, yeah, you were very new to doing anything flamboyant with your appearance. The thing you said about wanting to be invisible, that was what you expressed, like, when we first, like, hang out and talking about fashion, and, like, you were still very concerned about people seeing you, being perceived, like, being, like, wanting to just stealth go through the world and not have people bother you.
Yeah.
But obviously wanting to start experimenting more with being more flamboyant, and that was, like, why we did that video. Like, no,
we did that video because I wanted to hang out with you. I couldn't just ask to hang out like a normal person. I had to come up with some sort of like plan. It might sound strange to say that like I don't like being perceived because I have a YouTube channel. You know, and same with you, you're on TikTok, and I just bashed Frederick in the face. There's a difference between sort of like performance, which is something I very much enjoy. Like, I love performing on stage. I don't think that there are few feelings that are like better than performing on stage for me, and I think it's the same for you, right? Yeah, we both get like serious performance high and just love it. And this is, it's a different kind of performance. I don't get like the like rush from it, but performance in general is something that I can, that feels different to just like regular day-to-day interactions. And I wouldn't necessarily say that like my day-to-day life is becoming more of a performance. I don't think that's what's happening here, but it's more that I'm happy to like take certain elements that maybe I've become more comfortable with through this whole process and through like other people who are amazing, and knowing those people and all this kind of stuff, to just kind of do the things I want to do and not be overly concerned with what other people think. Again,
it's that element of control, isn't it? Like, things that you're putting out on the internet, you have control over. You know that you're happy with it, and you have curated this. And then with day-to-day life, being able to control your appearance and have that element of like fun and play inserted into day-to-day life makes it a little bit more bearable for people to perceive you, because it's just like, you know what they're seeing.
I think there probably were gender aspects like that affected me not doing certain things before, you know, like makeup is for girls and all this kind of stuff, and like there are certain like getting over things like that, like, you know, the fact that I can wear dresses now, that's so different to before. there's loads of things that have, you know, changed and shifted as I've got, like, more comfortable with my gender and more comfortable with being perceived and like, all sorts of stuff. It's all really good. It's all really, really good.
It's been wonderful seeing you branch out and try new things and express yourself in new ways. I find so much joy in it. It's just really wholesome and nice to see. It makes my heart so happy to see every time you post another look. The pink with the angel look from the music video.
Oh, you know, I forgot to, like, show a clip of the music video in like, the metal video that I did, so I'm gonna, like, show a clip of it now, just so that people know that I have a music video with powder paint, and, like, you should go watch it. It's been amazing seeing you get recognition as well, because, like, you might disagree with me, but, like, to me, you were, like, doing equally good stuff when we met as you do now, and just not getting recognised, which again I feel like the race element is kind of having something to do with that. And you know that there is definitely a correlation between, like, my YouTube videos tend to perform better if they don't have my face in them, and I don't think that's not to do with race. Like, I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think I am.
I mean, I know on TikTok it has been tested and proven that the algorithm favours white faces.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where, because, you know, if you just say like the algorithm is racist, then someone will come in your comments and be like, technically the algorithm. And, like, I know the algorithm itself is not, like, you know, it doesn't just, like, have an agenda,
right?
But it's a kind of, like, a vicious cycle type thing. You know, if people are more inclined towards clicking white faces, then the algorithm starts to show them more white faces, and then it just kind of, it keeps doing that, so even, like, well-intentioned white people will just not come across you. But, you know, we persevere, and I just, it was wonderful seeing you get, like, some of the attention that you richly deserve. This has all gone in a very sort of, like, cute, mushy direction, which is very not goth.
To bring that conversation back to goth, though, I think goth provides, like, this space for us to play. It provides a space for us to be flamboyant. It encourages ridiculousness. Like, more than any other subculture, probably, because of the romantic element. There is, like, melodrama is inherent to the subculture. So, and, like, fantasticalness is inherent to it. So I think that is why a lot of us are drawn to it, specifically, who are, like, you know, queer or just, like, inclined towards camp. Like, it provides, like, a playful fashion space.
I think more and more as I, like, get older, I'm remembering and realising, like, just the importance of play as adults. And I don't just mean, I often feel like the only place that adults are allowed to do that is within, like, a sex context. Like, like, not even necessarily kink, but, like, I don't know, like, role-playing or whatever. It's like, oh, well, now you can, like, have fun. And, like, it doesn't have to just be that. Like, you can play all over the place. And again, like, there's a reason why there's such a high correlation between, like, queer people and games like D&D and stuff. And it's so good for the brain. Yes. It's so good for you. Like, I feel like I was a more, like, stifled human being before I started expressing myself through play. And that can look different for everyone. I'm not saying, like all people have to, like, dress outlandishly or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be that. But I do think that, like, finding forms of creative expression and just doing a thing just for the sake of doing the thing that doesn't necessarily, like, develop a skill or anything, although in many cases it does. Like, I've got so much more confident with, like, role-playing as a result of playing, like, role-playing games, obviously, as you might expect. One of the books I read while I was recovering was Variations on Your Body by Avery Alder. It's a collection of, like, poem, game, prose things. The final sort of section in that like collection is a essay on monstrosity and queerness and queer leanings towards monstrosity and what that means, and, like, it really resonated with me, specifically as I'd just done something that that I think that a lot of people would view to be a monstrous act, in the kind of the monstrosity that people see as inherent to androgyny, right? And also with body modification, you know, that's also seen as like a sort of monstrous thing. So it was really, really affirming to read that at the exact time that I did. And I think you would get a lot out of it as well. It's just like
amazing.
It's gorgeous. Oh, also I make music that's goth. I completely forgot about this aspect of it.
You haven't mentioned that at all.
It's probably because I haven't released any of it yet, but it's
Soon.
in the process of being mastered now. And oh my god, Vlad did the cover for it, like you did the makeup on it, and it's, oh my god, it's so good. I had so much fun doing that shoot. I think I look the hottest I've ever looked in my life.
That's so hot.
And
oh my god.
I came up with the concept for the makeup, but the way Vlad like executed it was just so much better than I could have imagined. And it was just such a fun shoot. Like I remember I was taking full advantage of my like hypermobility to kind of like crawl around and be weird. And there was one point where I remember I was like crawling across the floor towards you, and you were kind of holding the camera, and you just sort of went, ah! What do I say at the ends of my videos?
Give me money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Give them money. Bye.
I'm Shanalika, this is Vlad Von Kitsch. My socials are in the description. Special thanks to my monthly coffee supporters whose names are coming up on screen. If you would like to financially support this channel, you can become a monthly coffee supporter yourself. But if you don't want to, then you can subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like the video. These things are also all very helpful. Where can they find you, Vlad?
I am at Vlad Von Kitsch on Instagram and TikTok. I do clown makeup, draggy, clowny, spooky makeup on Instagram, and I talk absolute shit on TikTok. I make arguably funny horror content.
It's all really good. I really enjoy. I don't have a TikTok, and every couple of weeks I will just Google your TikTok and like watch, like binge all of the ones that you've put up, because well, yours are the only TikToks I'm really interested in seeing. One of my favorite ones I think was the one where you talk about like the like delivery guy coming to your door while you had just a singular pin sticking out of your forehead.
Yeah.
Just the weird things that happen to you as a result of just being a drag artist, like a horror drag artist specifically, are just very, very enjoyable to hear about.
It's a strange and glamorous life.
Okay, we need to say goodbye to the audience.
Yes.
Goodbye!
Bye!
And as the video hasn't stopped recording yet, just a poor Théo is gonna just like, there are so many things
so
that he's
rambly.
gonna
I'm
have to
sorry.
see.